It's February 22nd, 2014, and Viktor Yanukovych is a fugitive on the run. Just days ago, he was the president. As he arrives in a 3-car envoy at Donetsk airport, he has one objective: to make it 40 miles to the Russian border. Donetsk was once his home, where he controlled business, politics, and the criminal underworld. But things have changed. The guards at the airport won't even let him board his private jet. He makes a last-minute dash to a helicopter, surrounded only by his most trusted inner circle. Yanukovych is desperate to escape the mess he has created over 4 years of brutal authoritarian rule. He has amassed a personal fortune estimated at $37 billion, making him the 9th richest person in the world at the time. A system of corruption built on gangland ties, poisonings, bombings, and political trials helped cover his tracks. But where did the money come from? Who exactly is Viktor Yanukovych, and why might he be returning to power again soon? Yanukovych came from rough beginnings. Born in 1950 in Yenakiev, the western part of Ukraine, he had a checkered adolescence. This area, in the Donetsk Oblast, had been developed by the Soviet Union, but as the USSR declined, tensions were building. Unlike those in the west of the country, Yanukovych's first language was Russian. Speaking in Ukrainian made him uncomfortable. The likelihood of his success looked slim. But growing up in a tough, hostile, and poverty-stricken world, Yanukovych had learned one thing: that no one would come to his rescue. He needed to fend for himself at all costs. This macho attitude led to a reckless youth. A year before his 18th birthday, he was sentenced to prison for robbery, and then again 2 years later for assault. These charges don't stop him from marching forward. After completing a mechanical engineering degree, he lands a position managing a trucking company. An instinct for self-interest serves him well in an industry where business always mixes with politics. He soon makes inroads with the local political scene, has his prison record squashed, and by the 1990s is ready to take his first position in government. The timing couldn't have been better. With the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, control of the country was up for grabs, and Donetsk has become a battleground. As an area rich in raw materials, manufacturing, and filled with Russian immigrants, Donetsk attracts power, both legal and illegal. Any political party in the region is forced to negotiate with organized crime. This underbelly is laid bare in a spate of public murders. The true extent of crime and murder has never been completely exposed, but an excavation decades later would find over 30 corpses of lawyers, investigators, and even judges dating back to the 1990s. The most public was Yevhen Sherbin, at the time the wealthiest man in Ukraine and the leader of the Liberal Party. In 1996, after his private jet touches down at Donetsk airport, he exits onto the runway and is immediately shot dead. That same year, Yanukovych is elevated to the governor of Donetsk, but he has a target on his back too, especially because he was openly pro-Russian. He only narrowly escapes a number of attempts on his life, but lives under constant fear. At work, he is racked with nerves about his office being broken into at any moment. Hidden from the front of his office, parked out back, is a bulletproof armored personnel carrier. If there is any danger, he can flee within seconds, having a guard escort him to the Russian border, which is less than an hour away. When Yanukovych strikes a bargain with the national government to stop contesting President Leonid Kuchma, his support in Donetsk becomes uncontested. Better yet, the Party of Regions, which Yanukovych joined in 1997, is rising in the polls, slowly gaining power in parliament. Their methods were inspired by gangs, using a network of violent vigilantes to scare journalists, activists, or opponents from speaking out. This helps Viktor Yanukovych earn the prime ministership under President Kuchma. He uses his newfound power to control government institutions and minimize the prosecution of criminals he's connected to. With a deeply corrupt justice system and police force, very few unwanted charges or convictions are ever followed through with. Yanukovych had risen to the second highest position in the country, though he still wasn't satisfied. He wanted to take the presidency and control the entire country. But his arrogance and audacity were about to hand him his first and most significant failure, making him public enemy number one and sending him to the sidelines of Ukrainian politics for years. Throughout the violence of the 1990s, momentum for public protests had been building. A trigger point came with the kidnapping and execution of a well-known investigative journalist in 2000. Secret recordings revealed to the public that President Kuchma had ordered the assassination. After a case had been building for years into the death, the former interior minister was found dead on the same day he was due in court to answer questions about the death. The government claimed it was a suicide, but he was found with 2 gunshot wounds to the head. Many suspect him to have been assassinated to avoid bringing down other high-ranking officials. Amid these events, the public is eager to vote for change, choosing the anti-corruption candidate Viktor Yushchenko. However, throughout local and national elections that year, disruptors were intimidating voters. Meanwhile, there were at least 2 attempts on Yushchenko's life, a foiled bomb plot and a poisoning that almost killed him. 2 Russian attackers are quickly arrested with 3 kilograms of plastic explosives, claiming they had orders from Russia to carry out a hit on Yushchenko. When the results come in that Yanukovych has won the presidency, the public are shocked. The European Union refuses to acknowledge the results, followed by the international community. Demonstrations pop up around Ukraine, with non-violent protesters dressed in orange clashing with the heavy hands of the state's armed forces. Up to 100,000 flood the streets of the nation's capital, Kyiv, in what becomes known as the Orange Revolution, as tensions are escalating. One parliament member says that Ukraine is one step away from descending into a civil war. As the Supreme Court announces that it will look into accusations of election fraud, the Donetsk regional government threatens to break away as an autonomous region unless Yanukovych is declared the victor. In December 2004, the Ukrainian Supreme Court ruled the election invalid and order another to be held. The results of the repeat election are announced the following month, and as expected, the independent candidate Viktor Yushchenko has beaten Viktor Yanukovych by a comfortable margin of 8%. Yanukovych had resigned a week and a half earlier from his post as prime minister, and now he had lost the presidency too. From the outside, it looks like an utter defeat, but Yanukovych is already plotting his revenge. At the next chance, he would seize control, destroy his enemies, and transform the country into his own personal kingdom. The pumped-up hopes Ukrainians had for the Yushchenko government didn't take long to deflate. First, a government is formed with a coalition with the co-leader of the Orange Revolution, Yulia Tymoshenko, but immediately there are issues. Ineffective collaboration and refusal to compromise means the coalition fails to get through meaningful legislation, and Tymoshenko soon breaks ranks with Yushchenko, calling the government corrupt. Then, in 2008, disaster struck with the global economic crisis, which plummeted industry by 32% and failed to recover over the following year. The public is desperate for an alternative to change their fortunes, and so hedged their bets on the man they had ousted 5 years earlier, Viktor Yanukovych. He has been shuffling around government roles, serving as prime minister and people's deputy, biding his time. By the time of the 2010 election, astonishingly, he was polling as the most trusted politician in the country, and the voter fraud 6 years ago seems to have been forgotten. When Yanukovych wins the election and forms a coalition named Stability and Reform, once again Ukrainians were optimistic about the beginning of a new era of modernization for the country. Yanukovych's first move was to bring in his allies from Donbass who had no political experience, many with criminal ties. He then gives away rights to Russia for a base in Sevastopol, Crimea, until 2047. Yanukovych then turned his attention to his enemies. One of those was his main 2010 opponent, Yulia Tymoshenko. She had launched anti-corruption campaigns and was now claiming that the election was rigged. Yanukovych needed to silence her. His administration went after her on corruption charges in 3 separate criminal cases, back to back. The first 2 were dismissed on a lack of evidence. However, Tymoshenko was found guilty in the 3rd case. She was sentenced to 7 years behind bars, disqualified for running for parliament, and hit with a fine totaling $188 million. It was widely condemned as a politically motivated witch hunt to clear the way for Yanukovych's power. Secretly, as he was moving his rivals out of the way, Yanukovych began putting together his master plan, entangling his political power with his personal finances, and forming a small group known as the Family to do it. Some were ministers serving underneath him, while others were members of his real family, like his son Alexander. Professionally, Alexander worked as a dentist, but in the first year of his father's presidency, he saw his net worth explode to $133 million. As Yanukovych's stranglehold on the Ukrainian economy tightened, properties were moved into private hands. Public parks, gas and oil fields, and even land from schools. The Yanukovych empire was growing, held up by a web of complicated financial networks using shell companies, or to siphon money from the Ukrainian economy to offshore bank accounts. Yanukovych had even changed the constitution for more centralized power and seized businesses to maintain control. Ukrainians were now living in authoritarianism. Yanukovych even uses the 2012 Euros to embezzle money, announcing that new stadiums and roads would be built, but instead builds a road connecting Kiev with his own private mansion. Fit with a private zoo, chandeliers, and a horse riding club, the mansion is fit for a king and valued at $100 million. With cronyism, corruption, and the abuse of power at all-time highs, the Ukrainian voters were approaching breaking point with Yanukovych, who soon faced his biggest decision, whether to side with Ukraine or Russia. In 2013, Yanukovych's government was in advanced talks to make a trade pact with the European Union, something which would have fractured his relationship with Russia. Just days away from signing the agreement, though, he buckled under pressure and pulled out. In an instant, more than a year's work of preparation was destroyed, and Ukraine shifted its ties east to Russia, where Yanukovych's loyalties had always lied. For many, this was the final straw. Thousands protested and flooded the city squares in a revolution of dignity. Then, one night, peaceful protesters in Maidan Square were assaulted by police, brutally. This transforms the issue into a bigger one. They don't just want the EU signature anymore. They demand that Yanukovych step down. Anti-protest laws are rolled out the following month, but protesters don't flinch. In a terrifying display of militarism, snipers are set up on the rooftops of Kyiv, and in the space of a few days, 100 civilians are murdered. Sensing that there was no way out, the next day Yanukovych went on the run. He had been preparing for a quick exit for days, packing his bags and collecting valuable possessions. An arrest warrant is soon sent out for Yanukovych. He was now a fugitive on the run, wanted for the mass murder of protesters. He travels in a 3-car envoy in the dark of night to Crimea, then by helicopter to his base in Donetsk, surrounded only by his most trusted inner circle, local political partners and guards. But the rest of the country isn't so loyal. His Falcon jets are blocked by authorities, his travel documents are refused, and Yanukovych is forced to fly out from Crimea, a Russian stronghold. As Yanukovych flees over the border to Russia, Ukraine's chief prosecutor surveys the damage. According to an investigation, the Yanukovych family had cost the country a staggering $100 billion, including $32 billion in a single year smuggled over the border in trucks. Some of that money was put towards funding movements in the eastern part of Ukraine. Partly with this help, back in Yanukovych's home region of Donetsk, all hell broke loose. Armed paramilitary groups declared the Donetsk People's Republic independent from Ukraine and received support from Russia. This quickly breaks out into a war between Russia and Ukraine for control of the territory, which in 2022 turns into Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. The ongoing war in Ukraine has only thrown the country's decades of dysfunction back into the spotlight. Ukraine has been through 3 presidents since Yanukovych. An interim president, followed by the chocolate king confectionery billionaire Petro Poroshenko, who moved the country closer to the European Union, began decentralizing power and cleansing the country of oligarch control. Now, current President Volodymyr Zelensky has promised to stamp out corruption once and for all in a bid to continue receiving funds from international partners. But Russia still has complete control of Donetsk, and Viktor Yanukovych, despite being 73 years old, is still not out of the picture. Vladimir Putin has promised that if Russia defeats Ukraine, he will put Yanukovych back in power, ensuring a more divided Ukraine and forcing its people to relive a nightmare of oppression, brutality, and corruption. Does Viktor Yanukovych have a chance of becoming president again? And should Ukraine be part of the European Union? Let us know what you think in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more in-depth content. We'll see you again in the next one.